What is up, PGL people? My name is Aquarius, and I'm going to be doing your power rankings for Season 7 of the PGL. Really cool honor to be asked to do this. I know that it's been done by a lot of people who I think are a lot more interesting than I am, like Shuckle King and Under the Radar and Liv, so I'm honestly quite honored to be seen as valuable as they are to be doing these rankings, and I greatly appreciate it. So yeah, I'm gonna get into ranking everyone's teams. This is pretty fun to look at. I have never actually done power rankings for anyone before, with the exception of like maybe once before, I don't know. So I don't know how good my rankings will be. I'll just preface it with that, if you disagree, all power to you. I might have missed something, or I might not have, looking at your draft, initially gotten an understanding of what it is. And if you have disagreements, definitely voice them to me or anything like that. And if anyone wants further clarification on something I said or something I think or anything like that, I'm a pretty open book. You can message me on Discord. I'm in the PGL server. And I was even once a temporary participant in the PGL. Ooh, baby, Season 5, weeks 1 through 5. Let's go. But it's all right. Yeah, I think that's it. Just a little bit about who I am, in case you don't know me. I am Aquarius, like I said. My channel link will hopefully be in the description below. And I think a pretty good battler. I'm ranked pretty highly on the overall ccsdraft.nl website. Not that that means a whole lot. I think that some of those ranking systems are a little bit bogus, but I'll take it. And I at least think it shows that like I have a decent grasp of Mons. Recently, I have jumped into the Wi-Fi scene, in which I have won UPBA and have been the runner-up of UBL. Those are the two Wi-Fi leagues that I've participated in and completed. I am also the commissioner of CGT, which is the most competitive Wi-Fi league on the website, but also the most competitive league in general on the website, which is super cool as well, and is also something very hype. So I'm kind of using this as a little promotional thing for anyone watching too. If you're not following the CGT, definitely go follow the CGT, because it has some amazing, insane, super fun battles to watch that everyone can learn from, because everyone in the league is such a good battler. Anyway, enough self-promoting. I'm really excited to be doing this. According to Meme, the format was with Mega Pokemon, which is pretty cool. It's something that, I kind of miss now that I've been only playing Galar decks. And it was pretty cool to each draft see a lot of the low-tier Megas that were picked up as well, which is pretty neat. I was asked to sort of comment on how to build around Megas, which is a little bit tricky of a question for me, because I don't really view Mega Pokemon as any different from regular Pokemon, really. But generally speaking, I think that they are powerful tools on a team that will always force prep no matter what. Just the presence of a Mega Pokemon is always guaranteed to be something that your opponent has to consider. Things like Mega Gallade, Mega Lopunny, Mega Diancie just threaten prep so much. And those are some of the top tier offensive threats that we've been missing out on in this gen. So it's pretty cool to have them in this league. So anyway, I'm going to go into my criteria for how I ranked these. Because I kind of felt weird to say, no, I like this one more, I like this one more. I wanted to have kind of a little bit more of like a stable system to sort of rank them. And I'm not going to like be super like going by like, oh, this got 2 points, this got 3 points every time I go through. I just want like transparency in terms of like how I sort of divided how I thought about each draft. The first thing I thought about was top level synergy. So one thing about that is sort of, if I take the top 4 Mons on your team, Mons that I think you're always going to bring or should be bringing to most of your games, how do they cohere with each other, right? Do they cover each other's weaknesses? Do they pair with each other offensively? Do they form good cores? How reliant are they on some of the low tier picks? Can they operate within themselves, etc., etc.? So just looking at the top tier threats and saying, okay, how threatening are these top tier threats and how well do they cohere within each other, is kind of the big thing that I looked at outside of the low tier mons. So I just am looking at the top 4 or 5 mons, seeing how well they cohere together. That made I ranked them all out of 50 points. This was about 10 of the 50 points. Another 10 out of the 50 points, which is kind of just a hit or miss category, was just necessary typing. So things like a ground type for the electric types, a dark type for the stored power shenanigans, fairy type for dragon type immunities, and a grounded poison for T-spikes. If you have all of those, I gave you a 10. And I mean, in a few cases, if your mons were bad that did that, I lowered the score a bit. But if a team is like not having a ground or not having a dark type, I tanked points there. The next category I used was battle style versatility. This was the biggest category for me. It was about 15 points because it encompasses a lot of things. So one, it encompasses a team's ability to be built both offensively and defensively. I think a good draft should be capable of being in a balance build, in an offense build, a defense build. It should have that wiggle room to pick and choose based on the matchup. If the draft looks like it can only do one thing, this is where I tanked your points. I also took into account how often a mon has versatility to be both built physically offensively or defensively, and I also counted how many mons could have both physical and special coverage / making sure there's a balance there, right? Like if all your mons are physical mons, this is also where I tanked your points there. And then I also took into account pivots in this category as well as the top level synergy one. There's a few 5-point categories I did low tier options, so I just looked at sort of the bottom tier picks to see how well they supported the team. I looked at hazard setting and hazard control. People might find that weird that I only made that 5 points out of the 50, but I've never actually found that to be too big of an issue unless you have like literally none. Like as long as you have one good setter, one good clear, you're basically set. But I did give like extra points for like extra good hazard clearing. But like teams that only had like one setter, one clear, I wasn't going to punish them by like taking away 10 points. I felt like 5 points was fair. And then the final category is speed tiers. Just making sure that there's variability in your speed tiers, making sure that you have fast mons, you have slow mons, you have mons in the middle. You don't have massive gaps in your speed tier that allow Pokemon to run adamant or modest natures against you. That could just make your opponent's offense a lot more potent and threatening. So yeah, that is the categories I used, and then I added those points together. I'll tell you how many points your draft got. No one got 50 points, but you know, some people got closer than others. So the bottom ranked draft is, hold on, get ready for the fucking greatest transition of your life. Boop. Okay, perfect. I am going to do this. Okay, perfect. It is the Twin Leaf Turtwigs, and the reason that the Twin Leaf Turtwigs is the bottom ranked is largely because of the necessary typings thing. They lack a ground type, and while they do have an electric immunity in Zeraora doesn't really often want to be coming in against things like Koko or many other electric types, like Zapdos. It could, but it wants to be in a role where it can revenge or break or something else, and it doesn't want to be defensively switching in on those things. So that I can find a little problematic about this team. The other sort of types that it's missing that are a little bit more problematic are it's missing a fairy type, which is a little problematic because the dragon resist outside of fucking Lairon is Scissor, and if a dragon type has fire coverage, which is most fire types, then Scissor will struggle. The dark type is Murkrow. Murkrow is bad and would not deter me from bringing like cosmic power, stored power, and Necrozma against this team, like at all. So it's not coming most games, and if it comes, I feel like it's pretty easy to beat. So it's largely those, but on top of that, like I don't think there's a lot of top level synergy here, right? Like you look at the top 4, it's like Zeraora, Blacephalon, Scissor, Conkeldurr. They're all pretty nice, but like it struggles to break ground types, which is something that Zeraora really wants. Scissor and Slowbro do a good job of like forming a pivot core, I will say. Like Slowbro pivots on grass types and then Scissor comes in and gets to U-turn. But I just feel like every time Zero Aura is in, it's going to be trapped against opposing electric or opposing ground types that just like the team isn't capable of breaking very well. Especially because there is no grass type, and the water type that is offensive is Cramorant, which is, again, bad. So I'm not very sure how well this team does. I think the pivots could have been better. Like, Zero Aura Scissor Slowbro looks good on paper, but I also just feel like instead of Blacephalon, something like Victini or Volcarona that also has pivoting capabilities on the grass types would have been nice. I think that's the other thing too, is like the fire type can't really switch into the grass types. I know there's Scissor, but it's just a lot of pressure on Scissor. So I wasn't a big fan of that. The other thing about like overall synergy is Slowbro and Espeon kind of feel weird together. Like Espeon baits out dark types and could baton pass on them, but so does Slowbro. So it just feels like a waste of a spot when I don't think this team is in like desperate need of hazard clearing, right? Like there's these two defoggers and there's Conk and Scissor. So like the magic bounce doesn't seem super necessary. I'd drop that and focus on getting better low tiers because Cramorant, Murkrow, and Lairon are just completely useless, and I gave a 1 in low tier options. I also gave a 1 in speed tiers. The Mon is Zero Aura, and then it's Blacephalon. I guess it's Espeon, Blacephalon, and then after that it's like not kind of the lower tier Scissor. So there's just this massive speed gap between Blacephalon and Scissor, which is pretty awkward. And then the final thing I gave the bottom score for was hazards. The defog is nice, but the fact that Lairon is the only stealth rocker just makes this team so much worse, especially because things like Conkeldurr and Zero Aura thrive off of residual chip on the switch-ins. So, for example, something like Hippowdon in this league, if they're facing Hippowdon or something like that, that would thrive from taking spikes damage or T-spikes damage or something like that. But in this instance, you got to get a little bit cheeky against it here. I also don't think Ampharos does anything for this team. Like, there's literally already a Zero Aura. So that was a little weird as well. But I do wish you the best of luck in the season, and prove me wrong. Next team is the Arctic Staraptors. So let's get to that. The other team got 14 out of 50 points. This team has 18 out of 50 points, so a bit of a jump. But I'm not a fan of this team either, Red Feathers. I think that Dracovish is just not supported here. When you draft Dracovish, you want to be able to draft a team that highly pressures bulky grasses and bulky waters. So I'm thinking about things like Zapdos or Rotom Heat, which is capable of pressuring those things. Like Dracovish Zapdos is such a good core. But this team doesn't even have an electric type, and it doesn't even like have a good grass type. Eldegoss doesn't do much offensively here. In addition, the pivot being Slowbro is really weird because Slowbro is pivoting on grass and water types, and there's nothing here that punishes that. The main breaker here is Vish, so after like you pivot out with Teleport on Mega Slowbro, Vish isn't able to capitalize on anything that like is coming out. So it just feels like a very strange amount of synergy. I put this as this is the worst team in terms of the top level synergy. I just think like there aren't many good top level mons here, not big threats. Like the biggest threat is Vish, and Vish is just like not supported here. Yeah, the defense is okay with like Skarmory P2 and Mega Slowbro, but it's a little Bolt Beam weak, and it's kind of taunt bait. It just doesn't cohere very well. In terms of necessary typings, I think this has like a grounded poison, but the dark type is Absol, which is pretty bad, and the fairy type is non-existent, question mark? Yeah, so just a few things missing there that brought the points down there a lot too. Battle style versatility, I just don't see a direction on this team, right? Like, it's either just going to sit there with Skarmory P2 and Mega Slowbro, and things are probably going to taunt it, or it's going to like try and like just come out the gate with Vish and Neolago, but I just don't think that's sufficient enough offense without the support to back it up. Low tier options, again, Magmortar is like the one thing that I think might save this team, in the sense that like it does punish grass types, I suppose, and it has T-Bolt for water types, but I just like a team with so much pressure, breaking pressure on Meg Mortar, it just doesn't seem right. Eldegoss seems a little wacky. This team wasn't like in desperate need of hazard removal like there's a Skarmory. I guess it needs it a little, but it's just like Eldegoss is not the mon that I would think of, especially for 60 points. That seems really pricey. Yeah, and then Absol's a good mon and it fits the dark type role, but I just don't know, like, again, how it gets in here. And it's just like, if your best breaker options on this team are Meg Mortar and Absol, it's gonna be a little bit of an issue. The hazard control did get a 5 though, which is the highest possible points it could get. You do have all of the hazards on pretty reliable mons, as well as solid defog options. I mean, I just think having a plethora of hazards makes it good because it pressures your opponents to defog anyway. So that is the saving grace of this team. The speed tier was also the lowest it was. The team is pretty freaking slow. It goes from 124 to 103 to 83 on Mag Mortar, so it's not very good. And the rest of the mons are like very like between like 75 and 60, which is just really mediocre speed tiers. So was not a fan of the draft of the Arctic Raptors, but again, like I told the Twin Leaf Turtwigs, prove me wrong. I'm excited to see how well you do this season. The next team that I'm doing is the Booming Bathgate Blacephalons. What a team name, which takes the number 14 spot. Looks by the CCS score, they're a pretty good player. So, I mean, obviously I'm not doing this by the level of how good the player is. I'm doing it based on the draft, and I don't really like this draft. I really don't. Generally speaking, I think there's like the good elements of this team is that I like Latios plus Spectrier, in the sense that they both put a ton of pressure on the dark types, which opens the walls for Spectrier to just go crazy, which is good. And especially the fact that not every team is good dark. Like, you just saw a team had Murkrow as their dark. Like, that offense itself can plow through teams pretty effectively. My issue with the synergy here is I just feel like it's going to be very difficult to get those two mons in the first place. So, like, the pivoters are Cinccino. Like, that's not very good. Like, there needs to be more pivoting on this team to bring the offense in, because otherwise, like, you're just going to be sacking shit. And if you want to be playing between these two, you want to be able to have some element of sort of defensive pivoting. I could see something like Type Null or even like Togetic working as low tier options on this team, partially because they are sort of slow pivot options. Anything with Teleport could be nice too. The necessary typings though are all there. They're just pretty low tier, like the Fairy is Grand Bull, the Grounded Poison is Vileplume. The versatility is in my opinion. Like, I would give it a higher ranking if there were better pivots, but there aren't. So it's just kind of predictable that it's just gonna be like Entei comes out, starts spamming moves, Heracross comes out, starts spamming moves, Latios and Spectre try and clean. But I just, again, a lot of these mons feel kind of one-dimensional outside of Latios, and again, it's about bringing them in. I think the team kind of struggles to find interesting ways to do that. Low-tier options do fill the gaps that are needed, but it sucks that they had to be done in the low-tier section. I would have much rather these be used towards slow pivots, and one of Entei or Heracross fills the Grounded Poison or Fairy role. Like, Entei or Heracross, I don't know what they do for each other. They're both just physical breakers that are good, but they kind of have very similar roles as physical breakers. And then for hazards, Empoleon kind of just like carries the team, which is bad, because like it's going to be the main rocker unless you're bringing Rock's T-Tar, which is kind of and Rock's Piloswine, which isn't always going to find matchup. And it's like, you don't want to put the pressure on Latios to defog, and if you are, then I feel like you're misusing Latios, or it's being put in a bad spot to not be as versatile as it possibly can be. I just think that like the limited hazards and the over-reliance on Empoleon for hazards is going to like weaken its available move slots. That will make it a little bit less effective of a bulky water. And for things like Spectre, you absolutely want hazards to chip down its possible switch-ins over time. Speed tiers are good though. I won't go into that too much, so that's where the team got a little bit of extra good points. Next is the Sacramento Samurats taking the 13th slot. And they're pretty interesting. I don't hate the team. This is I would say now this is like getting to a territory of like I don't think many of these the past 3 drafts I wouldn't say they're bad, but I'd say they need a lot of room for improvement. I don't think this team is anywhere near bad. I think that it just might struggle in certain respects. So Sacramento Samurats. Mew is a very interesting mon. When you get Mew, what you really want to do is you want to draft like you don't have Mew. The reason you want that is because you don't want Mew to be locked into a specific role when you use it, right? You don't want it to be the setup sweeper. You don't want it to be the hazard setter, the remover, the Fizdef mon, you know what I mean? You want to have other mons that can fill that role so that Mew can use its versatility to its fullest extent. I don't know if that's done fully here. Mew is the only mon that is a speed boosting setup option on this team, and I don't think there's that sufficient options like hazard screens or tailwind or anything like that to support Mew being the setup sweeper alone, and I think it makes Mew pretty predictable. But the other issue with it is like it also is kind of being relied on for hazard setting, and that's going to make it forced to be a more defensive role if King Belgerion wants hazards, which things like Melmetal, Mienshao, Noivern really do want. So it just sort of puts Mew in this instance, okay, am I going to be like a hazard setter like I am on the OU ladder, or am I going to be a setup sweeper? And it's sort of caught between those two things. So if you were to make free agents, I would look to a mon that has speed setup options, and I would also look to a much more reliable spike stacker that Melmetal and Mienshao can take advantage of. But the good parts about it is that I think Mienshao pairs very well with Mew. I usually go for higher tier things like Jirachion or Urshifu, but the general idea is just breaking dark types for Mew, pressuring ghost types to come out that you can knock off. Does pretty well here. So I like the Mienshao pick a lot. And Melmetal is also interesting, but I've actually never used Melmetal myself, but on this team it seems pretty well supported with like Wish Aloe. Necessary typings wise, I put it low, but I forgot to mark what it's missing. It seems to be missing a grounded poison. It also seems to be missing, no, there is a dark type here, there is a fairy type, and the ground electric immunity is Camerupt. I think I put it pretty low just because Spiritomb not a great dark type because it doesn't resist ghost. Whimsicott isn't a great fairy type because it's not that bulky, and Camerupt is probably a pretty unreliable ground type in terms of just the fact that it's low tier. So the thing that's missing is grounded poison. T-Spikes could do a number against this team, so that's important to keep in mind. Other things though, like, are fine. I like kind of poor speed tiers. The hazard control is way too pressured on Mew, but it did get a 24 out of 50. Yeah. Okay. The next drafts kind of go up a bit. So we've had 14 out of 50, 18 out of 50, 23 out of 50, 24 out of 50. This one's a 31 out of 50. And this and the next, like, oh, I don't know, 8 drafts are only like 6 points apart. So this is the Dallas Tyrannostars that are in 12th, right? But like this team with just a little extra perks could have very easily been like 5th, you know what I mean? So like there's not a big gap in the middle here. The reason this team is a little bit lower is because I don't like its top level synergy. Hoopa is a good mon that can break psychics here, but that doesn't really help this team very much. Like there's not much that psychics need to be broken for. Usually you see Hoopa paired with like a really strong fighting type like Megalop that really wants those bulky psychics removed. There's no fighting type on this team. And there's not a lot of mons that like can beat fairy types as well. Like Drapion takes neutral damage to fairy, Registeel is a little defensive, and the thing is, like, fairy types are good against Hoopa and Megachomp. So that is a little bit of an issue in terms of team synergy. I also have an issue with Regieleki on this team. This team has like absolutely zero way to bait in ground types early on in the game. So I feel like most teams can just like keep their ground type in the back in this matchup and like never feel like they have to send it out ever until Regieleki comes out. And I just think there is a little bit lack of solid pivoting as well. It's like Blissey and Talonflame, which isn't that good. And means mons like Megachomp and Hoopa will struggle to even get in the first place. I know Aleki is another pivot, but again, I think it's going to be so easily stopped by grounds. Like, there's nothing on this team that pressures grounds come out. Like, usually I'd think of like Gothitelle to trap grounds, or another electric type to bait grounds out as well. You know, maybe an offensive rock like Lycanroc, but this just doesn't have that capability. Ground types will have no issue staying in the back if Regieleki comes, because they won't be needed for anything else. Necessary typings, though, I gave a 10. You have everything you need. Dark type, grounded poison, fairy type, and it's all pretty high tier 2 ground. Battle style versatility, I kind of put in the middle, 9 out of 15 there, because it's weird. This can be built to be like a great defensive team, like Blissey, Registeel, Florges, sort of Drapion, Mega Garchomp, really solid defensive options. And it can also be like Webb's offense, Araquanid, Hoopa, Aleki, I guess, Talonflame, Drapion, Mega Garchomp. But like, that's it. Like, there's an offense build and there's a defense build, and the mons don't really overlap on what can be what. You know what I mean? So like, 6 mons of these teams can be used for offense, 6 mons of these mons can be used for defense. But like, I have a hard time envisioning Blissey and Hoopa on the same build. So it's like, I feel like there's like 2 builds this team could make, and just the fact that it's that predictable could be a little bit of an issue. Low tier options are fine. I mean, there really aren't that many because there were so many mid tier picks. Hazard control is fine. You have all the hazards except for spikes. I do like spikes, but yeah, hazard control is fine. Speed tier, the biggest issue is that I think there's a gap between Talonflame 126 and what's 95? Drapion. And those are kind of mid tier mons anyway. So anything 125 through 110, which are a lot of mons, are capable of running Modest or Adamant against you. So that was the other area where points were kind of tanked. Next we have the Spear Pillar Shuckles, which makes me a little sad because Sid the Shuckle has kind of been messaging me a little bit about his team. But he did do a little bit of drafting for it before they asked me about it. But I do think this team is good. Like, this team is has a lot of potential. Bulu Kyurem is kind of like the offense outside of Darmanitan Azelf. I think they're kind of forced into, at least Kyurem is kind of forced into being a cleaner, which is fine. I just think it probably doesn't have enough room to be like a defensive submon, which is kind of like how I prefer it, because there's so much heavy defense like Pex and Chansey already. And I guess you can just build a stall build, but that seems kind of weird. With like a Darm on the team, but I guess it's possible with like Volibee, Lantern, Steelix. It just, I don't know. When we were talking, I was kind of against Chansey Pex, but Sid said they were pretty comfortable with it, so we'll see how it goes. Both of these mons, Kyurem and Tapu Bulu, pressure water types, which is great for Darmanitan, so I like this synergy there. The necessary typings are covered with the exception of the Dark Beam Volibee. That's where I tanked points a little bit. Battle versatility is in the middle for me. I think that it is capable of being a defense team with Pex and Chansey. I think it would be a little bit susceptible to taunt bait, but at the same time, you're not exclusively prepping for Pex Chansey, right? Like, you still need to prep for Darmanitan and like Hitmonlee in terrain, like things like that. And that's actually why I gave the low tier option the 5. I think Hitmonlee and Lantern pair very, very well with Bulu and well, with Unburden for Bulu, and then Lantern pivots on the grass types, brings in Kyurem to break, brings in Darmanitan to break. Works pretty well. Hazards, this is where the team got tanked a little bit. Pretty bad. Defog, Volibee, Rapid Spin, Hitmonlee. which I think is going to force Curum to be boots pretty often, and that really sucks because it really wants a boosting item when it's offensive to really just like get that damage output out there. And I worry the fact that it's going to want to run boots most often will sort of scare Sid into just running like Pex, Chansey, Curum stall rather than like capitalizing on some of the amazing offense that's here. So 32 out of 50, like still a good score. Just a little bit lower on my rankings just because there's a lot of good drafts this season. So, but not a bad draft by any means. Pretty solid, pretty unpredictable. So it'll be interesting to see. St. Louis Battle of Luchas is next. They actually also got a 32 out of 50, so I guess you could say this and the other team are tied for 10th. Very interesting team. So let's talk about Torn. Torn often like electric types will come in on, or bulky steels, Spadefmons, things like that. Buzzwole pressures the latter two, the steels and the Spadefmons, after Torn pivots on those, which is nice. My issue is that once you have Buzzwole in, and like you just like click CC and like the answer comes out, you've kind of lost all momentum, which is really unfortunate because it like Tornadus, Starmie are great momentum abusers, but I feel like Buzzwole and Bronzong just kind of halt the momentum that the team gains. So it's this weird thing where it's like, I don't know, I feel like you have to be really good about getting hazards up in order to make that not happen. But for me, it's like, I don't know, if a fairy or a flying type comes in, right, on Buzzwole, hitting that CC on CC or Ironhead or whatever on the Spadefmons that Torn is baited in, and then those mons pivot on you, like you're gonna lose momentum. So it just, I don't know, it's kind of caught in a stuck situation where like the answers to things like flying types or psychic types, whatever, is Bronzong, which is another sort of momentum killer in my opinion. It just, with Torn, you really want to get good momentum gainers, and Starmie is one of them, but I feel like Buzzwole halts momentum, Bronzong halts momentum, Umbreon doesn't always get to run Baton Pass. Mega Altaria is cool though. I like Mega Altaria as a possible setup sweeper, so it's not bad. Necessary typings are okay. The grounded poison's Roselia, and the ground is Golurk, so it's a bit low tier, so I marked a little bit points down for that, but it wasn't the worst. Battle versatility is above average. Altaria has a ton of different options, as does Torn, as does Starmie. I think Bronzong and Buzzwole and Umbreon are very predictable, but those other three are pretty good. Low tier options do fill the gaps that you want to fill. Like I said, the ground type in Golurk, the spike support and grounded poison with Roselia. It's just you want to be going for those as late as you've gone for them, because it just puts added pressure on them to come during the builds, and you don't want to be forced to bring your low tiers all the time. The hazard setting is a 4 out of 5. It does have all 4 hazards, which is pretty cool. And decent removal too. Defog, Torn, Rapid Zone, Starmie, really solid. The issue is just that I think a lot of the spikes support pressure, which I think is the strongest hazard here, is on Roselia, and I don't know how often Roselia is coming. But you know, if it's a good mon and a mon that, you know, this person thinks they're gonna bring a lot, then pretty good. There is an 80 to 105 gap in terms of the speeds that also made me take 2 points off. I believe that is between Rapidash and Buzzwole? Okay, 80, or no, Altaria. That just means all mons that are like 100 or 95 or slightly above 100 can run Modest or Adamant, and there's a lot of mons that can do that. So that can be a little bit of an issue. But a good team. I like Torn, I like Starmie. I am just concerned about losing the momentum that Torn does a really good job of gaining. So we'll see. Bristol Buzzwoles is the next one, which got a 33 out of 50. So we had a 31 out of 50, 2 32s out of 50, and a 33. So you can see how close these are. I actually like this team. I'm kind of surprised that it got as lower points as it did. Oh, I remember why. Okay. Well, anyway, Clefable, Garchomp, Aggron, that's pretty cool. Just jumping to battle versatility right away. Like, I gave it one of the highest. I gave it a 14 out of 15. No one got a 15 out of 15. A few other people got 14 out of 14s, but I gave this one a 14 out of 14 because the fire the Dragon Fairy Steel Core all get rocks, and all can be both defensive and offensive. So just the versatility of like what's going to come out of those three, really strong, really cool. The reason this tanked a little bit is because there's no dark, there's no grounded poison. So Volley could be those things, but it doesn't want to be forced to be those things, which could be problematic. But it's solid. I think it's pretty good. I think the issue with this team that made it a little bit lower is I think it's going to struggle with bulky waters. The grass type is Quilladin. There's no electric type. And you can't make Silvally do everything that I've already taken issue with. So I think just this team's going to struggle to break bulky waters. It's going to be pretty reliant on, SD8 maybe, SD Garchomp or something, just an element of like setup to do it. But even then, it's kind of Like, yeah, breaking bulky waters is going to be pretty hard for this team, it looks like, because it's just missing super effective coverage. And a lot of the mons like Chomp, Infernape, even Clefable, like many bulky waters come in on Aggron. So that's the reason it got marked down a bit. The low tiers are okay. I love Golbat. I think that it's pretty good. I just wish that some of these bottom ones were spent on more offensive picks, even if they're just 20 points, like just things that are a little bit speedier and can pack a little bit more of a punch, because I don't really know what Duosion does for you in this, for example. Hazards are good. Control is not very good, because it's Silvally and Golbat, neither of which can afford to run boots, which, makes the team Spikes and T-Spikes weak. T-Spikes, especially because there's no grounded poison, could be a huge bring against this team every week. And then the speed tiers are pretty low, if I remember correctly. So 108 and Infernape is the highest. Yeah, that's not good. So not great there. Yeah, but the reason I feel like I just shat on this team a little bit. The reason it's still in the middle though is because Clef, Garchomp, Aggron, Infernape is fucking nuts. It's so good. So just those alone, if you capitalize on those, like really solid. It's just about like the extra mons that I kind of took issue with. Like, I don't know. I feel like you want a grounded poison here because T-Spikes might bite you in the ass. Even though like Clefable and Aggron aren't affected by it. Milotic is, Garchomp is, Silvally usually is. Like that is something you don't want those things taking. Next team is which I believe is number 8. So we're at the halfway point. Let's go. Team Plez Magnazones, coached by Meme. Dragapult Mandiba's Mega Mawile is nuts. Like, that got a 9 in terms of top level synergy. Those 3 are great. They're a machine. And, Mawile is an amazing breaker. Pult is an amazing cleaner. Mandibuzz is a great defensive pivoter. The only issue with those 3 is that I think their roles are extremely predictable in every single matchup. But they're so good that it might not just matter anyway. The team outside of Mawile might struggle to break certain darks. Like, there's a lot of pressure on Mawile to do some of the breaking. But there is a Nidoking, so it could be perhaps fine. Trying to think why I marked this team down a little bit more. The necessary typing got a 10 as everything. It got a little bit points marked because I just don't think it's a very versatile team. Pult, I know it can do like Dragon Dance things or like Sub-Hex things, but like I think it's just going to mostly be running like Specs or Special most of the time on this build. Mandibuzz always does the same thing. Nidoking usually does the same thing. Volcanion doesn't have too many options. Rotom doesn't have too many options. Mawile could be SD, could be a breaker, but I think in this position it's going to be a breaker most often because it's the thing that comes in after Mandibuzz pivots most of the time. Not saying this is a bad thing that it's predictable because every Mon does really good here. It's more so just that, like, I feel like a good player can kind of telegraph what this draft is doing. The low tier options I gave pretty low, which now explains why this team's a little bit lower too. What the fuck is Solrock doing here? I mean, you have 20 extra points and you picked up a Solrock. Like, I think you need a secondary steal because Mawile is not a good steel type. That was kind of another reason. Like, it's a good steel type offensively, but it's more of an offensive fairy. Like, you want like a bulkier steel, even if it's like 40 points, just to have. And Primeape is good. I would think that you want something higher, but I have used Primeape once before and it's been pretty solid. It's just like if you want to break those dark types and not fully rely on Mawile to do it, you might want to have a little bit more easy to bring fighting type. two fairies here, but the bulky fairy is Clefairy. I don't like Clefairy very much, but I guess I can't really talk. Hazard control is average. You can see it right here. Nidoking's extremely reliable for it. Not really much else, but Nidoking's really reliable. I guess Clefairy can run it once or twice in the season. Defog is fine. Speed tiers are what's bad. Yeah. So there's Pult, Ambipom, Primeape, Rotom, Mow. And like Ambipom plus Primeape are probably coming to like 3 games this season, I think, at most. So just like the gap between Pult and Rotom Mow was something I took issue with. Yeah. Okay, but still a good team. Like the fucking Mega Mawile, Dragapult, Mandibuzz is fucking insane. Birmingham Weasels is the next team. Coached by HB. This got pretty high ranking in terms of top level synergy. I fucking wish Keldeo was on this team. Holy shit. I don't remember why. Wait a minute. This is the Weasels. Never mind. Hold on. We're not here yet. That's a little spoiler. Okay, Bungus Eaters is where we're supposed to be going. Cool. So this is number 7. Bungus Eaters is number 7. This is where I wish Keldeo was on this team, because Coco pivots on all those grounds, and you really want an offensive water to pressure that. And there's Poliwrath and Slowking. Like, I think you want a faster, much scarier offensive water, like Keldeo. Like, Poliwrath is just not a Keldeo. Like, oh, I wish this was a Keldeo. Instead of, like, Articuno. Like you could literally lose, like, Kecleon, Poliwrath, Articuno, make it, like, Keldeo, and then, like, downgrade, like, Sandslash. And I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Like, you might have to lose Salamence. I just think Keldeo would be so good on this team. God damn it. Because it's just, like, Slowking Poliwrath seems kind of repetitive. Like, I don't really know what Poliwrath does for you that Slowking doesn't. Anyway, Coco Mence, pretty good. Really good. Really solid. That is a mon that capitalizes on grass types that Coco pivots on. Salamence, that is. And really 2 good setup mons on top as well, which I like. I think this team will mostly find victories through sort of setting hazards up with Ferrothorn or T-Spike's Weezing or something, whittling stuff down with Slowking plus Articuno, plus maybe Mega Houndoom as a breaker, and then clean with Coco or Salamence. Oh, the necessary typings are a bit of an issue. And maybe I'm the only one who thinks like this, but I would, if I was facing this team, I would bring, like, my electric type Specs Rising Voltage, because guess what the ground type is? Sandslash. Sandslash, not that good. I don't like Sandslash. And I think it's gonna have trouble coming to every single game when there's a lot of defensive pressure on Ferrothorn, Slowking, Weezing. And you want to be bringing Salamence, Coco, and again, like, Sandslash can get worn down too anyway. So, especially if your opponent is throwing hazards against you, because, I mean, I guess there's Defog, Mence, Coco, Weezing, Articuno, but the most common clear, or the most, like, dedicated clear is Sandslash on this group. Like, you don't want to be bringing Defog, Mence, Defog, Coco. Usually Weezing doesn't have the move slots. So, that's another way Sandslash is pressured on top of being the electric immunity. So I could see just, like, a Rising Voltage Mon kind of climbing through this team, but maybe not. Battle style versatility. There's a lot of versatility between the top 6, the Mega Houndoom, the Ferrothorn, the Salamence, Coco, Slowking, Weezing. I just think these don't really offer anything new to the team necessarily. Low tier options I gave in the middle. They're good mons. It's just, I think the ground you need to pick up needs to be a little bit higher tier, a little bit more reliable. And you want that offensive water. I don't think Poliwrath does it for you. Hazard control is absolutely fine. You look at this shit. It's a lot. And the speed tiers are good too. So I won't go into that too much. Okay, now we get to go to the Birmingham Weasels. Sorry, I was very confused. So Birmingham Weasels are at number 6. And they are coached by HB. So, Lele Lucha, that's scary in itself. I also very much like the Incineroar Magnezone core. Because Magnezone pivots on grasses for Incineroar, Incineroar pivots on waters for Magnezone, Magnezone traps steel types for Lele. And PZ on this team, holy shit, why is PZ so under tiered? Is really good. It's really solid. It's a great special breaker that frees up Lele to do other things, which I think is very nice. And Sceptile, Mega Sceptile, which is down here, is a great cleaner, which takes pressure off of Hawlucha to do the unburden thing every week. I deducted points because this team does not have a good physical breaker. Incineroar is probably the best physical mon, and I just feel like you want a good physical breaker on this team. The fighting type is Hawlucha, which has 92 attack. That's a cleaner, not a breaker. So I feel like you just want something that can come in, sort of just punch a hole. I don't know what you'd get rid of. Probably Vivillon, and then maybe... it's hard to say. Probably Vivillon. Just try and find some kind of physical mon for Vivillon, because Vivillon like has no place on this team, I feel like. Like you can probably get a good physical mon for 40. So that tanked a little bit. The low tier options, Kadabra's great, Vivillon is not, so it got a 3. Hazards, hazard control, and speed tiers. Speed tiers are great. There's Sceptile, and then there's Hawlucha, and then there's PZ, and that sort of covers it. And Tentacruel at 100. And hazards and hazard control, pretty good, it seems like. I mean, not pretty good. Like, there's rocks and T-spikes on 2 months. Yeah, I gave it a 3. Rocks and T-spikes are on 2 months, but, like, the spin options are great. Donphan and Tentacruel. Basically, not a lot of options, but both Donphan and Tentacruel do, like, ridiculous well. Wow, I'm spewing my words. Both Tentacruel and Donphan do the hazard thing very well, between setting up hazards and spinning them, so, you know, you don't have to deal with hazards on your own side, but you can keep hazards up on your opponent's side. Great. Yeah, so I think this does a good job with the hazard thing. Okay, we approach the top 5. And all of these 5 drafts I love. Like, I love all of these 5 drafts. So, like, this is the point in the draft analysis where I would probably draft every single team that is in these top 5. So, yeah, we're going to start with the Camper Cocos, which take number 5. This team is great because Gliscor, Gengar, Rotom Wash is probably the best, outside of one team still that I haven't mentioned I can think of, probably the best top tier cores in the league. There's so much pressure on bulky waters and bulky grasses from these 3, and it's such a good mix of special and physical offense. So much of a good mix of like bonds that can be defensive in Gliscor and Rotom Wash, but also be like bulky setup options. Pivot between Gliscor and Rotom Wash is phenomenal, and then Gengar is the breaker to break grass types, and then you toss a mega fucking Gardevoir in the mix. Holy shit. Like, that is really strong breaking ability paired with a lot of really strong pivot options. Ordinarily, I'm not a fan of Bisharp, but because those bulky grasses and waters are really struggling in this game, like, I can, in this matchup rather, like, I'm thinking about, like, a Tangrowth or an Amoonguss. Like, even though there's a Rotom Wash here, like, this team does a pretty good job at beating it between, like, pivoting out and getting Gardevoir and things like that. So all the really bulky things, like, bulky steels or waters or grasses are getting broken down really easily. So this is like one of the better supports for Bisharp I've seen in Draft League in a while. Yeah. Plus, like, Knock is really cool with Bisharp. Necessary typings get 10 out of 10. You have everything, Grounded Poison, whatever. Battle Style Versatility got a 12. I think, at least for me, it's kind of predictable what this is doing, but in not a bad way. Like, Gardevoir can be anything. Gengar is going to be some kind of breaker, but it's good. Gliscor and Rotom Wash are very versatile, though, from my perspective. So that's where the extra points came from. The reason this is 5 and not 1 is because I think this team would be easily number 1 if these 4 were better. Like, Inteleon, I feel like adds nothing to this team. Like, I just, like, it's just there for the speed tier, and it just doesn't make sense to me. What I think this team needs, because I think it should have a better physical breaker that's faster, is Swellow. I think Swellow would be so good on this team, and it maintains that speed tier too. And like, instead of Inteleon. And then, you know, in terms of hazards, good defog options and stuff. I think there's a little limited setting options, like there's rocks on Bisharp, Gliscor, spikes on Klefki. It's not that bad. And speed tiers are very in the middle. The fast, like I said, the fast mod is Inteleon, which just belongs in the bin. So I would say pick up Swallow as a physical breaker with guts, and the tiers are then fine. So could possibly do a faster fighting or a faster fire instead of Flareon Hariyama. But it's not the biggest deal in the world. So yeah, cool. Next, number 4, Belligerent Blazekins. Let's go do Belligerent Blazekins. Cool. Okay, Belligerent Blazekins. I like this team. It's an interesting team. Something very funny I should mention about these top teams is that they don't have great speed tiers, but they still made the top. So, you know, sometimes you just have to like weigh your options. Like this team has a 2 in speed tiers because the fastest mon is, Jesus Christ, Cryogonal. So like it's not great, but the rest of the mons synergize so well that it's okay. So sometimes you like have to sacrifice speed tiers for synergy, and sometimes that ends up being good for you. So in this case, I don't think speed tiers are a big issue for this team because there's just so much pivoting going around. There's Unbird and Slurpuff. There's just a lot of great options here. So a lot of defensive and offensive options for the Belligerent Blazekins. So is this the Belligerent? Yeah. Belligerent Blazekins. Swampert flip turns and brings in Heatran and Zapdos against the grass types, which is amazing. Tran and Mega Venusaur cover each other so well. And I think because there's good defense and good offense, Zapdos is very free to do whatever it wants on this team, which is super cool. 100% necessary typings, has everything. 12 in terms of versatility. Haxorus and Swampert and usually do kind of just one thing. But Slurpuff, ton of versatile options. Venusaur is kind of basic, but Scrafty, Slurpuff, pretty versatile. Zapdos, I think, is very free to do whatever. Heatran, offensive or defensive, really great options. Low tier, here I love. I think Cryogonal does a lot for this team in terms of pressuring bulky waters, taking pressure off Zapdos there, and, you know, providing removal instead of Zapdos. Like, Cryogonal weirdly frees up Zapdos. I don't know why, but it does. And other low tier options like Slurpuff help with the speed issue. Scrafty is a bargain at tier 60. Holy shit. Even Basculin. Like, Basculin does a pretty good job at offensively doing Swampert's role if J-Bone wants to run a more offensive build instead of like a balanced build that Swampert would be better for. Hazard control is average. I'll just show you it here. Good rockers, webs, good removers. And speed tiers are like I said before, but the synergy on the team makes up for it. Next we have the Virginia Snovers in number 3. Let me see if I can find them. By Hahados. That name sounds familiar. Okay. So we have Thundurus Victini. Great core on top. Victini pressures bulky grasses for Thundurus. Thundurus pressures the bulky waters for Victini. And that pivoting offense sets the conditions for Mega fucking Gallade to go in, which is pretty cool. And on top of things like Blastoise, Sylveon, really solid in terms of like just offensive pressure. This team just puts on so much offensive pressure, which is cool. And is so versatile too. Like Blastoise can be the balance pivot, it could be the Shell Smash Mon, Sylveon can be offense defense, Crocodile can be offense defense, Victini can be setup or offense or whatever. Mega Gallade has so many options, so got a lot for battle style versatility. The rest of the mons, I don't have to say this. The rest of the teams in this video will have like all the necessary like grounded poison, ground type, like everything like that. So fairies, etc. This team is in 3rd because I hate Duraludon. I think it's a stupid mon that has no place in this game at all, and doesn't do anything. I don't know. I just think it's like, I think it's a bad mon. And I don't really know what Abomasnow does for this team either. I just think like with so many points here, like this team can be even made even more threatening. I just don't really get what Duraludon Abomasnow does. So I like the Porygon. Perhaps a Trick Room Abuser here could be cool. With like Trick Room Teleport. To be fair, like Victini with V-Create and Sylveon work well in Trick Room, so Porygon works. Plus, it's a Spectre answer that's not Crocodile. Hazards and hazard control, really good. Reliable rocks, T-Spikes, Crook can basically always afford rocks in its moveset. Duraludon, I guess. The clearing is kind of like it's like Thundurus and Blastoise, I think. But Blastoise is pretty good at being a spinner. And things like Thundurus, Victini are probably going to be running Boot Slot anyway, so hazard control is a little bit less of an issue. Speed tiers are average. I wish there was something faster than Thundy, but there doesn't need to be necessarily. Alright, so number 2. Alolan Geyser, which is a cool name. And I like this guy's logo. It's like a little Raichu, just kind of going whoosh. Insane team. This is my favorite team that I would draft. I am a absolute hoe. I even did a video on my channel about it for Scizor plus Landorus. I think it is amazing, and this is the one team that got a 10 in top level synergy because Landorus, Hydreigon, Scizor, fucking nuts. And the thing about that is like Arcanine and Togekiss are pivots to get them in. This team is just full of pivots, like pivot, 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 pivot. Like the only things that aren't pivots are Garbodor and Machamp. Garbodor, which can set up spikes early, Machamp, which can capitalize with a Guts wall breaking strategy with all those pivots. So amazing top level synergy. There's basically nothing on this team that I think like something threatening can't come in on. You know what I mean? Like there's no typing that I think can switch in against like Hydreigon and Hydreigon go for U-turn, and there wouldn't be something on this team that could just keep momentum against it. Like I don't know how you gain momentum against this team, because this team is just going to grab it right away and roll. Really solid, really good. Like the way to beat this team is just by going like balls to the wall offense before it can even like do anything at all. And even then, like you are not going to outstall this team or anything like that. You are not going to defensively cover this team either. He will spike stack your ass or get up rocks or something and start pivoting like crazy. He doesn't even need hazards. Like these are so good. Like things are just going to get chipped. Necessary typings are a 10, versatility is a 14 out of 15. This can do anything, this can do anything, this can do anything, this can do anything. Only reason it's not a 15 out of 15 is because Heliolisk and Garbodor kind of predictable. Scizor kind of predictable, but it's so good it doesn't matter anyway. Machamp predictable, but like these top 5 or top 4 plus just these top 4 in general could do so many different things. Low tier options are good. Machamp is a great mon to capitalize on all the pivoting. I've never been a fan of it, but it is a good mon to do it. I've also never been a fan of Garbodor, but I will admit it does fit well on this team. I kind of wish that it wasn't the only spikes that are on this team, / the only like dedicated hazards that are on this team, because it's just this and Landorus, which is why this team is number 2 and not number 1. Because Landorus doesn't always want to be running rocks. I suppose it could. But, you know, your like top 6 are so good. I can't imagine like getting rid of one for a Garbodor, but spikes are so good with this team. So it's a little bit iffy. Garbodor doesn't really have much good recovery outside of Pain Split, which I have never really seen it get off very well. And it just seems like it might die, and just, I mean, it kind of just feels like it's going to be like a suicide spiker, in which case, like, why not just get a Selgor? But hey, it'll be a good mon. Well, because it's grounded poison. Let me put it this way. Maybe it won't be around long enough to be a grounded poison to absorb T-Spikes, but also, like, look at your fucking team. You don't need T-Spikes. You're going to be Boots. You don't need T-Spikes. Yeah, who fucking cares about T-Spikes? Doesn't matter. So get in a Selgor or something. But you could also keep Garbodor. I just don't like Garbodor. Speed tiers are what also holds this back. It is one of the slowest teams in the league on average. The fastest mon is Heliolisk, and the other mons like Landorus, Hydreigon, Arcanine are kind of on the same speed tier level. So it's not great. So that brought it down from the other team just by 1 point. This team was 43 out of 50, and our number 1 team is 44 out of 50. So that is the Alberta Tyrantrums. It's right there for us. This team is nuts. I love this team. Rillaboom, Thundurus, great combination. Rillaboom pivots on steel types, flying types, grasses, all of which Shandy or Thundy take a ridiculous amount of pressure on. Like, everything Rillaboom struggles with, Thundurus and Chandelure just, like, completely destroys. and threatens them out and just gets amazing hits off. The top 2, Rillaboom and Thundurus, incentivize bulky waters just like straight up not come this matchup, which again paves the way for like Specs Fire Blast Shandy, defensive end games with Vaporeon. Super nice. And Mega Diancie is on this team. I haven't even gotten out to it yet. Impeccable Megamon. Arguably the best Mega in the format. I would say I'm between that and Scissor. But what I like about how Mega Diancie is sporty here is you've heard me talk about these up here as amazing special breakers. Usually if you draft around Diancie, it's sometimes forced to have the breaker rule. But Diancie can now use its like full amount of versatility. Like it can still be a breaker if it wants to be, but like it can also be a more support mon or a setup mon in the back, like with Rock Polish. And there's so much pivoting here between teleport, flip turn, U-turn, volt switch, U-turn, that I think this team's not going to find a hard time getting Diancie in on something that it can set up in front of. And really it only takes like one turn for Diancie to be like ready to sweep an entire team. Versatility is great. Every single mon, from my perspective on this team, even like Thundurus, can be defensive or offensive. Like every single one of these top 6 has the capability to do that. Top 7, top 8, arguably, like every single mon here can be defensive or offensive, I feel like. I'm even more on the offensive Vaporeon train as of late. So I really think that there's a lot of versatile options that Lokagol can do here. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Also a great mix of both special and physical mons. Thundurus can do both, Kamalian can do both, Crobat can do both, Diancie can obviously do both. But I mean, you just have physical breakers, special breakers all around, so it's great. Low tier options are a 5. Claydol, bizarrely, is good on this team. I've very rarely seen teams that Claydol fits so well on than this team. Not just because it's like, oh, I need a ground, here's a ground, but just because like it gives teleport, it gives spin support. It's great. And it's really nice that it's not like forced into the role of being a ground type, because there's also a Volt Absorb Thundurus here. Muck Alola also does very well on this team. It serves as the grounded poison. Just because you drafted Crobat doesn't mean you can't have another grounded poison, and it serves as the dark type. And just completely shuts down ghosts, which is great. Hazard control is solid, really solid, I'd say. I mean, 3 really reliable rockers, 4 really reliable clears. Defog Thundurus is pretty reliable too. And the speed tiers are basically what set this team over compared to other teams. Get a very similar scores to Alolan Geyser, just the difference is that Alolan Geyser had pretty bad speed tiers. This one has really good speed tiers. So, this got a 4 in speed tiers. Alolan Geyser got a 2. They were 1 point apart. So, that was the deal breaker, I suppose. But yeah, this team's great. This team just like offensively pressures everything. I would absolutely draft the fuck out of this team, and just pivots constantly. So that's it. Those are my rankings. Hopefully that was exciting for you all. But if not, then I'm sorry. I wish everyone luck in this season. And I'm really excited to be proven wrong. That would be pretty neat. But again, thank you for this opportunity from everyone who I don't know, wanted me to do it. I don't really know how like deciding this is done in any way, but yeah, it was nice to do this. Kind of a nice honor. So with that, go check out my channel if you haven't seen it. Little self-promotional thing. I'm doing a pretty intense draft league right now, so it'll be a fun watch. And yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And if anyone is upset with the rankings or just wants advice on things to change or things that I like or don't like or anything like that, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. Yeah, that is all. All right, bye.